there is a difference, right? But I think a lot of it, the difference comes from repetitions. I mentioned previously in other interviews that, the way our players grow up, our kids grow up here, they grow up passing the football with their hands. These guys grow up passing the football with their feet. So my point is, I think they have more opportunities, more reps. They play the game. They've been playing this game for a long time. Now it's just on a football field, and punting the ball and kicking the ball with their feet and passing it to each other. So the precision happens, I think, from that. And then, I think if you were to put an Australian punter versus an American quarterback, the American quarterback is better at throwing and the Australian punter is better at punting, if that makes any sense. But I think a lot of it just is repetition and how they've grown up. But as you mentioned, I mean, Korsak is as good as a punter as I think we've ever seen. And if my stats are correct, he hasn't had a touchback in 136 attempts roughly, and he's never been blocked, and rarely does he give up a return. So we've got a big challenge ahead of us.
Chad Leistikow, Des Moines Register.
Hi, LeVar. I wanted to ask a couple questions about blocked punts. First of all, can you actually tackle a punt? This is a dumb question, probably. Can you tackle the punter if you get there that fast? Can you do this?
It depends. Once he's established himself as a punter, it's treated like a quarterback, right? So if the quarterback sets up the pass, he has protection in that way. If the punter sets up to punt the ball, he's treated like a quarterback. So you have to block the punt. You can't just tackle him. If he's running, you can tackle him.
Okay,
because running and not trying to attempt to punt the ball.
It seemed like Jackson got there a bit early the other day and almost had a chance to. He almost got there too early, correct? Is that what it looked like to you?
Yeah, I don't know how that punt didn't get blocked. Actually, it went underneath his abdomen. So
yeah, okay. So my real question here is just how have you been so successful in the punt block? I mean, is that something you study? Walk us through. Is that a study thing? Is that a game plan thing? How do you go about?
It's definitely stuff we study. I mean, we study everything, right? That's what we're trying to do as coaches, and trying to find weaknesses and strengths, and like where can we gain an edge? That's what every coach tries to do. But I think as far as that goes, it's something we practice. It's something we emphasize, and typically when you emphasize something, you get the result. So that's something we've been emphasizing, and that goes back to last year. But I think that some of the success, and we had a miss the other day, which is that situation is not something we want to do. We have the lead. We're just trying to get the ball back, and we end up roughing the punter. And unfortunately, the drive got extended, but fortunately, we were put the fire out defensively. And Coach Parker and I were, he's not happy. I'm not happy with the situation, because the defense has to go back on the field and do a job they already did once. And that's not good. It's not good team football. So we're trying to avoid that stuff, but trying to be opportunistic when the opportunity arises.
Chloe Peterson, Daily Iowan.
Hi, Coach. I just wanted to ask you about Luke Elkin. How have you seen him become more consistent over the past year and a half?
Yeah, so Luke Elkin, I think this kid is tremendous. I think we have two really good snappers in our room, and two guys that are emerging leaders, not only in our room but on the football team. I think these guys, both with Liam Reardon and with Luke Elkin, I think these guys are really, really good. And you mentioned about Luke, and Luke, I think he got kind of thrust in the situation last year as a freshman on the road at Iowa State. Again, first road game that we talked about, and first opportunity is in one of the loudest environments we played in last year. But he handled the situation well, and I think he continues to handle most situations pretty well. And Luke is very consistent, has been for us, and continues to be consistent. As I mentioned about him as a person, I think he has tremendous leadership. There's some similarities between, when we were recruiting him, I compared him to, he reminds me of Danny Olsta from a snap and from his size and athleticism, and then with the personality and kind of the traits of Casey Kreider. You look at some of the comparisons. Casey Kreider's, son of coach and school teacher, school administrator. Same thing with Luke. So the commonalities are kind of ironic and very similar kind of upbringings and people. And I think the sky's the limit for him, and really happy with him. And I mentioned Liam Reardon as well. I mean, Liam is a good snapper as well. We're very fortunate to have both those guys. Liam's dad played here, Bill Reardon, back in the late 90s, and was a teammate of mine. Really good guy, really good player. Was a center for us at Iowa. Started as a center, was also our starting snapper, which is crazy to think about. Right, the starting center is a starting snapper. But he's picked up that trade his dad has, and the guys in the team love him, guys in the room love him. So again, we have two. It's talking about position rooms and special teams. It's really good when your snappers are the leaders, and the snappers are kind of leading the charge, because they're the ones that they're like Switzerland, right? They work with both guys, the punter and the kicker, and the kicker wants his time, the punter wants his time. Well, guess who has to decide? The snapper does. So it's fun having those guys, and guys that can take charge and do well at what they're asked to do.
Coach, we'll go back to Kennington Smith.
I think you're muted.
Still muted. You said during media day that one of the things that you wanted to evaluate with your kickers was their preparation and what they were doing in between downs and the field goal range. When you think about what happened these last 2 weeks with Iowa State and the crazy sequence leading up to the last second field goal, then Nevada was raining, but then there was multiple delays. What have you learned from each of your kickers throughout these last few weeks, and how has that aided you in kind of your evaluation of both of them?
Yeah, so both. It's funny you bring that up. I'm glad you brought it up and that you recognize that, because both of those guys were in crazy situations. Okay, you talk about Aaron in Iowa State. These are all situations we practiced. They're all things we've talked about. They're all things we prepared for, but it's never quite the same until you actually get in it. And the Iowa State game was, all right, we all think the game's over. Like, oh man, what the heck? We get sacked, fumbled. Well, that's not what happened. That if you go back and watch the tape in order, and those plays, a sequence of events, it's wild. It should be a situation study. The NCAA should study, and these people that study all these stats and statistics will study that at some point, right? Because we're in the minus territory. The quarterback gets sacked, fumbled, game's over. No, penalty. Okay, then they get a bench clearing, or I can't remember where they had a personal foul. Yeah, bench clearing penalty, right? Their bench came on the field. So add 15, we get the ball back, add 15, bang, we get the ball and across the 50 one more time. We're in field goal range. Like, holy crap, we're really going. And I think we handled the situation well, but it's not something that you go from sitting on the bench thinking the game's over till 10 seconds later you're in and trying to tie the game. So my point is, like, this is definitely not an easy situation for a first-time kicker with Aaron to go out there. And then you fast forward the next week. Okay, so now Drew gets the nod as the place kicker, and you get in a situation where the game took 7 hours, right? So 4 hours roughly of delays. And Keith Duncan had that, and Keith and Caleb had that back in 2019 over in Ames. It's something we talked about. It's something we've studied. It's something, okay, what is our plan of attack? The night before the game, we talked about it. The morning of the game, we talked about it. If this does happen, I don't think it'll really happen, but if it does, this is our plan of attack. And I thought the guys handled those situations as best as they could. But again, talking about two kickers, both guys don't have a lot of game experience. Those are wild situations to be in right off the bat.